Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 188.
You want to make sure that you have great projects that are engaging, projects that people are obviously interested in, but that they have a great educational value.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Derek Capo is currently the Vice President of ROBOTERRA, a robotics education company. Derek is an international award-winning serial entrepreneur and a Miami, Florida native. Although his background is in finance, Derek built a study abroad business in Asia, learning the power of hands-on education. Today, Derek works with teachers, partners, and students worldwide to prepare for 21st century skills needed to succeed. Welcome, Derek.
Hey, how you doing?
It's awesome to have you here. I'm excited to learn more about ROBOTERRA. And I said that correctly? ROBOTERRA?
Yes.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we get into, more about that company and your involvement in it, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Derek. I'm actually the Senior Vice President of International for ROBOTERRA. Born and raised in Miami, moved over to China at 25 and started an education abroad business. So that's how I kind of got into the whole education space. Joined ROBOTERRA in March of 2015, basically, heading up the operations and kind of building up the whole strategy for the United States and Europe and the rest of the world.
That's great. Well, and I want to hear a little bit more in depth about what, your journey and how that led you to discover what you're doing now with ROBOTERRA. I'm sure there's kind of a background story to that of how that all came about. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think, it's interesting. You always kind of start off on one path and somehow you kind of lead into, a few others. My graduate degree in finance and actually got one of my first jobs out of college was to work at a hedge fund as an analyst, stocks and bond analyst. And, our job really was to analyze investments and stocks and bonds and stuff like that. And this was from 2004 to around 2007. And kind of in 2007, I saw that the economy is going to definitely hit a wall. I figured, this is not going to be good. Things got to change. So I decided to quit my job and decided to move to China. The main reason was to, kind of move away from Miami. I had been in Miami almost my entire life at that point. And I said, you know what, I got to try something different.
Wow, so that's a difference though, right? I mean, Florida to China. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a vast difference, right? Because I'm Hispanic as well. So my dad's from Cuba, my mom's from Spain. So we've got this great diverse background. And for me to go to China, it was an interesting conversation. My dad was like, stay longer. My mom was crying.
Yeah, I would imagine.
The difference of, taking the risk, right? And then I went to study Chinese for a semester. And lo and behold, the United States economy kind of has its problems. And I said, well, I'm not going to be able to go back. I can't even find a job with my industry. It was finance. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start a business. So the first business I started was education abroad or study Chinese abroad. So I would basically make it easy for students and, anybody, executives to go to China, study Chinese and really have a great experience, kind of doing that.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Then I ran that about 7-8 years and then I got approached by a couple of founders and they were from Stanford and Columbia. They said, listen, Derek, I know you're doing a great job with this business, but I think we really could use you for, helping us build out this business for this robotics thing. And I'm like, oh, robotics, I've heard about it. I know what it is, but, how big is it and what kind of opportunities are there? And then I kind of did my research and I said, you know what, this is really good. I see where the trends are going. More people are starting to do robotics and coding, and it seems like this is the way to go. And so that's kind of why I joined and kind of like the whole path of how I got there.
And you were telling me before we started recording that you've actually kind of outlasted some of the founders of ROBOTERRA. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, how that I mean, sometimes we feel really passionate about something. Has that happened to you? Like, I mean, how has your love and passion for this particular company grown?
Yeah, so, when you first started, or anything, you're always intrigued and interested, excited about a challenge. And then you go through the realities and the ups and downs. And, the co-founder left, obviously very amicably, but she wanted to continue her studies and do her doctorate. And obviously starting a business is very, very time consuming. So it was just a life decision that she made. Of course, we're all still amicable, and I still talk to her all the time. But yeah, as you start to get into the business and you start to see what your product is able to kind of do and impact people's lives and the future, right? Like you could see how this can be a significant change in the either a personal education space or the actual school system education space. And when you start to see people having a great time using the product or just robotics in general and see the benefits out of it, it just makes you want to, stay longer because that you really are changing the world, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Maybe how you've seen your paradigm change that. I love those words. I like to see how their education has evolved or their mission or things that they love. Tell me about that. I mean, when you first started out to this to now, how is your thought processes and that paradigm change different?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you first start a business, usually it's just a bunch of ideas. Maybe you have something on the table, but you're not really sure, right? So when I first started, I was actually in China, helping out the China business kind of get off the ground, trying to learn the market. And it was tough, really tough, because you're trying to figure out what's working, and it's a different world from the States, right?
Yeah.
20-something, almost 30 years, understanding the whole States mentality and how consumer decision-making goes, and then switching it into like the China mentality, vastly different. But, it was a struggle at first. But then over time, things got better. The team started working together and starting getting better ideas and finally starting to produce something that was actually differentiating us from the rest of the market. And then once we started seeing that, we just said, what, this is the path. This is the path that we should take. We should be much more aggressive in this, and then let's just move forward with that. And the reality was that it was robotics still, but it's layering a software, kind of a curriculum on that. Because we noticed that the biggest problem was that a lot of companies are doing the actual hardware side or the building side, but they're not focusing on the critical thinking / coding / skill set needed to be able to actually code a robot very well, right? And so we figured, this is what we should be going after. We've seen the interaction with the students. We see how excited they get. And we figured this is the way we should kind of put all the chips on the table on this side of the business.
Well, and that's awesome. I kind of want to start in now to learn more about ROBOTERRA. Let's talk about maybe what services you offer and what you have available online.
Yeah. So basically right now what we're selling is a hardware and a software and a curriculum kind of packaged into one solution. So the hardware, what we have is an actual robotic kit. If you go on the website at roboterra.com, you'll be able to see. So the actual hardware, what we've done is it's a nice little black box, and within that box there's about 5 compartments or 5 boxes. It's Think, Sense, Act, Build, and Connect. Essentially, each of those boxes are the corresponding parts of the actual robotic kit. So the first one, the Think box, essentially is the controller board. The Sense box is essentially all the sensors needed to lights and stuff, tape sensors and motion sensors, so you can create interactive kind of robots. Then the third box is the Act box, which where you have your LED lights. And then you have the Build box, which is you have the actual aluminum alloy components to basically build the robot. And the last box essentially is the screws and your wrench and your Allen key. That way you can kind of build everything. You don't need any other additional tool. So then the software, what we've done with the software is kind of make it really easy to start coding and building robots. So we realized at the beginning it was kind of hard to just kind of say, hey, start coding, right? So what we did was we created these projects and we broke it up into about 8 stages, from stage 0 being, kind of training, to stage 1, already starting to code and build simple robots. And then going all the way to stage 8, where you're coding really complicated robots with a lot of different sensors and motors, et cetera. And essentially what it works is you select a project on our software, and within that project you go through about 7 or 15 steps, whatever. Every project has different steps. And when you're going along through that step by step, you're learning how to actually code and build a specific robot. Then once you coded that or actually completed that, then you've already got the skill set to start doing custom robots. So let's assume you want to combine Robot 1 with Robot 2, or Robot 3 features with some of Robot 4 features, et cetera. You can kind of do that on your own once you've kind of learned that base of coding.
So I'm going to tell you what I'm getting out of this, and then you tell me if I have it correct. But so basically you get a kit that will teach your child how to build a robot. Is that what I'm getting, like the coding and different things like that? And then once they've learned how to do like stuff off the original kit, then they can continue to so it's kind of a hands-on way to apply application of building a robot, learning how to code, all those things together. Is that correct?
That is correct, 100%. Yeah.
Ah, awesome.
I should help you. Maybe you should come to my team and help me fix this.
And that's really what I really loved about it. When you first approached me about, talking about ROBOTERRA, I got on your website and it looks just amazing. It just looks like something, I know my kids love to tinker and to build, and then it's just something that I think is going to propel their learning of coding and all of that stuff into the future. And I kind of want to talk about maybe some of the different programs that you'll find. Of course, I talked about the original kit, and then you have other solutions. Do you want to go through those solutions and maybe what that curriculum can look like, for each one?
Yeah, so the solution really is kind of the whole curriculum that we built through the software. So all the curriculums are actually all standardized to next generation science standards, as well as Common Core and the ISTE standards. So the whole point is that, our the kind of mission really is how do we get a school or anybody around the world to be able to learn how to code and build a robot on day one without needing extensive training. So the problem that we found in, the U.S. market school systems, as well as with more time I'm realizing the world, is that nobody has the skill sets to be able to teach coding to kids. And if they do, they're working at huge corporations getting paid a lot of money, and they probably don't have a lot of time to be able to do this, right? So what we realized was, okay, how do we make this really simple? And so our thought process was, okay, let's try to do as much tutorials on the software as much as possible. Let's break everything up into steps one by one. And then once the students actually kind of, get exposed to all of this, or the teachers get exposed to all of it, they're able to share that knowledge very quickly, at least troubleshoot, right? Versus teacher just kind of teaching and telling the students, this is how you do this and this is how you do that. The teachers are more like facilitators, where they're kind of helping and guiding students and actually helping them complete projects. Our goal really isn't for them to just do the projects that we have on our system. Our goal really is that they start to become creative and start to do a bunch of different projects that are outside the actual system, and start actually doing things that maybe could be real world, life-changing type of robots that maybe they're not in our system. And that's really at the end of the day we're trying to look for. The students actually become really creative and start doing a lot of really neat things with the stuff that we've provided for them to do.
Well, and that's awesome. It sounds like a funner way too. I'm thinking about sitting through coding classes and how boring that. I'm kind of more of that creative. I like the hands-on type of stuff, but this definitely sounds a lot more fun for kids, especially to really wrap them into that world.
Yeah, some of the issues I'm seeing is there's a lot of solutions out there that's requiring the kids to sit down and look at a computer, right?
Yeah.
That's not really what we think is the kind of the whole experience that we should kind of teach our children, right? The whole thought process is like, how do we get kids to, sit down and do some code, but build, interact, work with teams, right?
Yeah.
Work with a team of two to build small robots, and then, whoa, golly, you've got 4 people together and you can combine 2 kits, and now you can make more complicated robots. And, you can definitely see all the values of working on challenges, communicating, everybody noticing their strengths and weaknesses, and how they can definitely make something happen, with a really challenging project, and seeing the full result of that, right? And I just think that just sitting down at a computer looking at a screen is not really, it's not going to be as good as sitting hands-on with some of the stuff that we have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I noticed on your website too, you have a bunch of different programs. This isn't just meant totally for schools. You actually have a homeschooling resources, and then you have, after school programs and pilot school programs. Tell me about each one of those.
Yeah. So one thing we noticed is when we attended a few conferences, that we found some parents that would come up to us and say, this would be really good for my homeschool, my homeschool, because I have a 12-year-old and I'd like to really do this. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And so we started realizing there was this huge movement of homeschools really kind of getting into the whole maker kind of space and getting into robotics. So we figured that we would try to, get more involved and try to provide as many resources and ways that we can help out. Homeschool's a little bit, it's pretty fragmented, so there's all these different ways. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to provide a very hands-on solution to parents that want to actually do something like what we provide. In regards to the pilot school programs, we are basically asking schools that are interested in doing a pilot program where they basically test our kits out for free, basically test our kits out, see what how they interact, what the feedback are, etc. And then, we're pretty selective about how we choose pilot programs. We have an internal kind of system, and then we kind of have a vote with some of the team members, and we say, we think this school would be great for this type of pilot program. And in regards to after-school programs, we noticed that a lot of after-school programs are just not as engaging as they should be. Try to get into as many after-school programs as possible. We're still starting to ramp that up, actually. Another thing that we have that's actually on the website is a thing called a hackathon. We actually have a ROBOTERRA hackathon, which essentially we do at events at libraries, and this is also where some of the homeschool parents actually join in, where we do an event for 5 hours, and within 5 hours, a team of 2 with one robot kit, each team of 2, they're tasked to build a robot within 5 hours. So the goal is, how do you get 50 students in a room who have no idea how to code to be able to finish and code a robot by the end of the 5 hours that can do a specific function? So whether it's a walking robot or maybe the robot's waving its hand, et cetera, et cetera. So these are cool events to kind of let people know, like, this is what you can do with our solution, but this is how creative your kids can be, right? Like, it's not just, it's looking and staring at a computer or, running around. It's like, look, this is how really creative your kids can be, and look at the output.
Yeah.
So, that's a few of the things that we have.
Yeah, like I said before, it's really application learning, and I love that idea because I really think it just propels it, creates a love that kids might have in learning something new like that. That sounds great. And I also noticed on your website, you have like a ton of resources. It just seems like a great place to get really well connected to a community. I mean, even if you're homeschooling or whatever, to some sort of community where you can, like you said, where there's that collaboration, because that's a really important part of, learning and coding and doing those types of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're actually trying to build. Yes, that is correct. And we keep on adding more resources. Believe it or not, one of the first major ones that we did was I contacted, before we started, kind of marketing aggressively here in kind of the States, the first thing we did was we contacted, I think, 150 robotics teams, some of them championship teams and stuff like that. These are in high schools, right? And I started asking them a few questions, and I kind of asked them, like, how did you guys get started, et cetera, just kind of doing the same, kind of feedback, just trying to understand, what the thought process was. And what came out of that was I realized that a lot of these people that started teams were engineers that were working at a company and part-time, wanted to help out, and they didn't know where to start, but they just started, right? And little by little, it just started getting better and better and better. And I realized that there's a lot of schools and a lot of people out there that do not have any clue, any idea of how to start either a robotics team or how to start a robotics program. So one of the first things we did, which we haven't officially launched it, but was to write a 200-something or 100-something page book on how to start a robotics club or how to start a robotics program in a school, which also could be used in homeschool as well. And it's a great resource. Basically, it's got feedback from more than 100-something teams, things like how we started, what is the organizational structure, what are the fundraising ideas for some of these teams to fundraise money. I mean, just so much information that we got from them, and we keep on adding it every year just to make it better and better. And that's just one of the resources that we have.
Yeah,
and eventually we'll have,
awesome.
Through the software, an ability for students and teachers to communicate in regards to projects and specific topics that we have in regards to, kind of our, whole robotics resources and solutions that we have. So, the community is important. I think it's extremely important in order to, have a community and listen to them and be able to provide feedback. So at the end of the day, they're the amplification of your message at the end of the day. If you don't have a community, it's just really hard to kind of move forward in this world.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, like, I did a Lego League and some of those types of things with my kids, but these robots looked much more advanced than, some of the Lego things that we did. I think you're just taking that to a whole nother level. And I love the idea. I know I'm in a homeschooling community. I think this could be something like if you had a group of kids that you wanted to do this with. And like you said, there's so many great, like, you have a free manual on there. Do you want to talk about the free manual that you can get off your website?
Yeah, the free manual is kind of started in regards to learning how to actually, get into the whole robotics space. I think there's a lot of intimidation of what to actually get into or what to buy. A lot of people, and I think it's very normal when they want to get into robotics, the first thing they do without so without consciously knowing they're getting to robotics, is they'll buy a toyish type Lego, right? And then kind of when they go into there, they really don't know what to do next, right? And so a lot of problems is that you'll see some things that are more toy than actual educational. And so what we did with our manual was kind of show, hey, listen, like this is kind of what we're doing with on the education side. This is what we're doing, and this is how to get started kind of with us. So that's kind of our whole concept of the whole robotics manual that we kind of published.
Before we go on, please listen to these messages. Do you know a young person who wants to avoid student debt yet ignite their future? If so, don't waste your time going to college. Join the fire starters over at Praxis. Praxis combines an intensive 3-month professional development program and a 6-month paid apprenticeship with a dynamic growing company and guaranteed full-time job placement. No degree is needed to get started. Whether you're an ambitious go-getter right out of high school, a creative thinking college student who is bored sitting through classes, or a college grad looking for something better, discover Praxis. Get exclusive Firestarter information about Praxis by going to discoverpraxis.com/mind. Mind with Derek Capo, using robotics to teach hands-on 21st century skills.
Let's talk about maybe some challenges that you've had as you've been, working with the ROBOTERRA. There's always got to be challenges. You talked about, basically some of the business challenges already, but, give us some of those challenges that you've had and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, I think, I can break this down into different segments for you, right? So I think business challenge, I think like anything, right, is getting exposure and people knowing who you are and what your brand is. When we first started, nobody knows who you are. And so you have to keep on trying to, pound the table and say, this is who we are, this is what we do. And continuously stay on that message and don't change it too much. If you change it too much, then you start to confuse that market. People have to consistently know what you're doing. But before you have that strong message, you should definitely talk to the people to find out what it is exactly that the problem is and how can you help them solve that problem, right? So I think once you find out what the problem is, solve that problem, and then eventually find out what the right message is to those same people that are probably going to be looking at buying a solution or getting into it, then that's when you keep on hammering that message. So our message to the whole world is robotics education made simple. And so it's basically saying anybody that wants to get into robotics or doing anything with robotics and education, we have a solution that makes it extremely simple for you to try, for you to integrate. And so that's what we did, and that's what we're doing. So,
I mean, like I said, my kids did the robotics or Lego robotics type of thing, and it was very intimidating to me. I never felt like I was smart. I'm not an engineer and stuff, but I knew my kids just love that kind of thing. I love that idea that you're trying to make it as simple as possible so that you're not, people aren't scared about trying it and letting their kids get into it because it's something that they can understand. That's great.
My background was finance. And then I moved to China and I did this whole education abroad, language education, right? So one thing I learned was about learning by doing, right? With education, with language education. And that was the same concept, the same thought process was, can a student really learn as effectively sitting down for 4 hours or 3 hours a day studying Chinese or studying Mandarin versus going outside? And this is why I really got into I really got into the robotics thing. I really saw the whole application and how that worked and that whole trend. Was I had one of these clients in China come to me and said, I like the fact that I go to the university because I'm 15, 16 years old in the summer and it makes me feel like I'm in college, blah, blah, blah. But I want to do something more with my tutor after school. And I said, okay, fine. Yeah, we'll give you 2 hours of tutoring. And, just, no. I want to do 4 hours with the tutor or like 3 hours with the tutor. And I want to go shopping. I want to go to the restaurant. I want to order food with my tutor. And I'm like, so what are you getting at? It's like, I want to be able to be in the real world situation with somebody there right next to me so I can use all the knowledge that I've learned in the classroom and apply it to the real world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that was like a whole new product idea. Like right there, I flipped the switch and I go, wait a minute, this could be a new product. And it ended up being a top product for years because of that thing. And that lesson, that connecting the dots from learning about industry and business with the finance job, connecting to China and learning that, and then connecting that with robotics basically makes it all connect. Learning by doing is extremely powerful, not just sitting down and just staring at something. It's when you have that whole kind of solution, the whole kind of experience together really, really changes. It really changes everything. So
it makes the learning really stick, like.
Yeah, it makes it stick. We had kids in China would study for 2 weeks a month, 6 hours a day for 6 days a week. And they were so fluent. I mean, they would get so fluent after about 2 weeks to a month. And so with that in mind, and you talked about challenges of the business, when I went to the R&D team, I said, we definitely need to make sure that when we have these projects, we have to have specific triggers that makes them interact with other people and let them start doing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that the projects don't have this long, make it very long and boring. You got to make it as fun and as quick as possible and get them to build that confidence. Just like language learning, as you're learning a language, the more confident you become, the easier it is for you to learn and acquire a language. So with robotics and for anything intimidating in life, once you start very little, step by step, you start to see the improvements, you start to gain your confidence, all of a sudden you're starting to be able to absorb and accept more or new information into it. So it's, that's the challenge, right? Is how do you get that mindset and what I've learned and what other people have learned and put it into a software and a hardware and just kind of package it all in that way,
Yeah, make it less scary. I mean, like I was talking about with my own personal experiences, I'm scared to touch it because I'm afraid I'm going to ruin something or I don't know what I'm doing. But really, when you make it less scary, it's okay if you mess up here or there, and it will help you learn, something down the line of how it works even better. I mean, just something so it gets you out of the box and moving. Yeah, I love that.
That's what it's all about. Yeah,
that's great.
That is what it's all about. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about maybe some successes that you've seen with the products that you have. I mean, have you gotten any great feedback from people who have used your products?
Yeah, we've had our products already used by homeschools and people from different parts of the world. Obviously, China is kind of where we started our business. We've got great feedback there. We've had school districts use it already for summer camps. So we're starting to see schools kind of look at it in summer camp and then eventually put it on as a kind of after school for the rest of the year. And then eventually we'll have it into kind of the full-blown, curriculum. But yeah, I mean, the feedback has been great. I never thought I would be able to code a robot before. I never thought I could. Now I can, or I feel like I want to do more, right? And when we do these hackathons for 5 hours, the kids are doing it for one project, right? But we'll see them look at all the other projects, right? And try to see hey, I can do that now, or I can do this and I can do that. And I think that's what we see as the exciting factors, that we saw somebody come in with no knowledge and kind of walking out saying, yeah, I think I can take on this whole coding thing. I mean, I may not be an expert or amazing at it, but at least I'll know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
When somebody shows me some code, I'll be like, hey, I know what that is.
That's great. And he's talking about the hackathons. I wasn't getting that the first time you said it just because of the audio, but the hackathons are definitely on the website, the Student Robotic Hackathons. There's a video there. And then there's different, project-based learning, stuff that you can learn from those hackathons. So are they held at a place or do you do them online? I mean, what's the vision behind that hackathon?
Yeah, so right now the hackathon is essentially being done at libraries. So we started with a library in California. I think we did 2 of them, one of them in a library and one of them at a university in San Francisco. And then the next major one that we're going to do is in San Antonio, Texas, since we're going to a conference at the end of June, the ISTE conference. And so the goal is, once we've got it, kind of all the kinks out, make sure everything's good with running the hackathon and being able to kind of, speed it up. We'd like to roll it out nationwide. So we'll have them at libraries, or we'll potentially have them online. The only thing with online is, we have to make sure how do we monitor it, obviously feedback with online. But the goal is that we have them in libraries or in schools, where people get to see what it's like to kind of code and build a robot and kind of get that great interaction and experience that students have at the end of the whole experience.
That's awesome. What if somebody wants to hold a hackathon? Do you help with those? I mean, you talked about you have a hackathon how-to guide, hosting a hackathon.
Yeah.
I mean, you're more than happy, like, if they go on, and that's like a free one-day, like, where people can come in and try it, like, actually use them.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
coming into or participating in a hackathon is free. Hosting a hackathon, that's what we're trying to get, work on, making sure that we've got the right model to make sure that we can expand the hackathon extremely aggressively. So the goal is that we send 25 kits to a specific host, right? And then they would be in charge of running the entire hackathon, following our basically step-by-step guide of how to actually complete and, have a successful hackathon. And then from there, those kits would be, transferred to another library, another host, et cetera, et cetera. So
cool.
Right now we just have a few hackathons that we've just posted. Our goal is to eventually have 10 to about 30 hackathons a month nationwide, just so we can get people, kind of interacting and doing stuff with our solution.
That's awesome. Great. Well, let's kind of go into that, what we're going to see in the future from ROBOTERRA. What are some things that you're hoping to see down the line? And we talked about more hackathons, growing the movement like that, but do you have new products coming out?
Yeah, so we have our current kit right now, a little bit of a refresh of the kit, probably by the fall of this year. It'll include a couple of more sensors and motors and stuff like that, just to kind of provide a little bit more experience. But the reality is we're going to focus on more of the content that's either on our website, but also on the actual software. We have about 30-something, maybe 40-something projects right now, and the goal is to have about 100, 150 projects by the end of this year, starting from obviously the stage 0, which is like that training phase, all the way to stage 8. Stage 8 project will be kind of like a student builds a transformer type robot where they build a kind of a car, and then they're able to get it to stand up like an actual transformer,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
And then get it to collapse again and turn into a car. So, again, in order to do that, you have to go through, at least 20, 30 projects, making sure you get up to that level. And eventually, once you get to that level, then you're good, right? You're good to go, and you can do a lot of different things. But, content is difficult. You want to make sure that you have great projects that are engaging, projects that people are obviously interested in, but, that they have a great educational value. It's not like just pretty boring stuff. It has great educational value. And make sure that you kind of meet all of those checkpoints, right? Where you have to have great interaction. Students love it. They love to share. They like to talk about it. And if they have and then eventually they learn a lot. To learn engineering principles, science principles, coding principles, engineering principles, obviously. So that's really our goal, is really to make a much more robust and content-heavy, software in the next 6 months to a year.
That's awesome. Well, and you can get on the website if you go under solutions and take a look at what's included in the original kit. It's got the price and everything there, but then it's also got what each different module includes. It's really, I think it's great. It's just much more, like I said, clean, advanced of what I've seen before with some of the robotics programs that I've experienced. And I think too, there is a possibility that you could use one of these kits in a group setting, and it wouldn't be all that much if you're sharing the cost even. So what's your thoughts on that?
Right. So our thought process is in the beginning, we want students to kind of do either one-on-one or two-on-one, one kit with 2 students. And then over time, once the students have gotten a grasp of the knowledge, the coding and some just basic, principles, then they can get together. Either 4 kids can be sharing 1 kit or 2 kits, and then kind of making more complicated robots. And the reason why we're kind of doing this is because a lot of our competitors, you'll see them buy a big kit, right? Like a big robotics kit. It's on the box. It'll literally say the number of pieces, like 200 pieces. And then, that's going to be shared with, I don't know, maybe 5, 7 students. But what ends up happening is, the students are the educational value starts to get diluted significantly, right?
Yeah.
So once you're teaching one-on-one, even one-on-two, that's basically the limit point. Once you start hitting 3 or 4 with 1 kit, forget about it. The 5th kid or the 5th kid is basically looking up at the sky and, wondering, okay, maybe I'll put this together. It's just not the same. At the end of the day, it's just not the same. So we think that at the end, you got to go in stages. You got to go step 1, getting them one-on-one, and then eventually kind of go into kind of groups of 4 or 5. And when you have extremely complicated projects, to work on.
That's cool.
So that's kind of our thought process.
Yeah, that it builds on itself. Yeah. So that's great. Well, maybe give us some habits of what you feel like, in a personal life that can help somebody be successful in their education and understanding robotics.
So I think one of the things that you learn when you start to do robotics is how to be organized and how to think critically about how you're going to plan and do something, like anything in life. When you code and build a robot, for example, you're going to start from the very beginning, right? You're going to start from one line of code and the second line of code, and eventually you'll get to 5, 10 lines of code, and obviously the principles of kind of putting all these parts together, etc. And I think one of the real world applications, obviously, is the time management, knowing how to manage your time, knowing how to be organized, because if you don't know how to manage your time and be organized, you're going to run into a lot of problems.
Yeah, you're going to not be successful in building something, huh?
Yeah, no, it's really hard, right? I mean, I've met some really successful people that were their time management, pretty poor, but when you find out the truth, it's they have an executive assistant that's basically helping them manage their time, right? There's always somebody behind the scenes, right? But I think that, when you look at these habits in regards to robotics, I mention this is because I understand that there's not going to be everybody out there that says, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a coder, right? Why should I get into this whole robotics thing? And to me, it's more like, listen, I think it's important to expand your brain, to look at different things. It's important to do that, right? Just like, why is it important? Why do I think it's important to learn several languages? I don't think the 2 you should be. I think you should learn 3. And it's just, kind of developing this kind of utility belt to be more exposed to different things, different cultures, and learning that when you understand that when you learn something different, your whole perspective on life will change, or your whole perspective on an idea will change. And I think that that's kind of the thought process. Is how do I, me personally, since I don't have any background as an engineer, how do I kind of communicate this to the whole world, saying, listen, this is not just for kids that want to do stuff with engineering in their life. These are for people that we think that should be exposed to just a different world. And once they're exposed to it, it's going to help them in some way or another. So one of the things I mentioned, obviously, is time management. Obviously, when you start working in a team, communication skills. I hate to go back to the time of my old business, but I was running this thing in the summer. It was year-round, but I would have these kids in the summer. I would have 50, 60 students at one time in the summer. And we would have these dinners, right, where we would have in China, and so to eat dumplings in China. We had these kids in a room, 15 of them, 17 at a time, and you would just see them sit there looking at their phones, not interacting at all. I would literally just say straight up, I said, guys, the phones are off. Give them to me. I'm going to put them in the other room. You guys are not allowed to talk on the phone or look at the phone at all for the next hour or so. When your goal here is to interact with everybody else. And so I would do an introduction of myself, and then all the students would introduce themselves, and then they would go on talking for 3 hours instead of 1. And it was just kind of sad that I had to do that, right? That I had to take a little bit of technology away for them to kind of interact. And I think that with robotics, or with even our solution, you're able to get 2 students to start coding, building, and kind of interacting. And who knows, create some friendships that you never thought possible, right? And I think that that's one of the cool things about robotics in general.
That's awesome.
Yeah, being organized, being social. At the end of the day, I think those are extremely important.
Well, I think it's awesome. You've turned my question kind of on its head of what habits can you develop? And this is really this can help you develop some really great habits. And it's not just for the engineering, math kid. It's for everyone, because you learn some great principles and processes in the whole application of building it. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we say goodbye, do you maybe have any final parting words for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how we can get in touch with you and find out more about ROBOTERRA.
Sure. Yeah. Anybody can contact me. My email is Derek, DEREK .Capo, which is CAPO at roboterra.com. You can also fill out the contact form if you would contact me. No, I think we said a lot in this interview. I think I've said more about what we've said actually to any school that I've ever met, actually, which is great. You were able to get a lot of information out of me and kind of the whole thought process, and kind of see, how I connected the dots with my life and how I, I'm really passionate about this product and why I think everybody in the world should buy this. And I know it sounds biased, but I really do believe that. If not, I wouldn't be doing this, to be honest.
That's awesome. Well, and you can go on the website. I noticed as I was, scrolling through it and talking to Derek that you can go, like we said, do the hackathon, host a hackathon and work that direction with the free product. But then, if you want to purchase one, they have a coupon code right there. I mean, as soon as you log in to save 10%, and that will help with the cost of getting started. You can get that by going to Roboterra.com. Again, Derek's email is derek.capo@roboterra.com. However, we're going to be sure to link all the information that we've discussed today on our website as well. I'm also working with Derek to hopefully have the Luminous Mind be an affiliate for ROBOTERRA, so you can easily find the product there. But thank you so much, Derek, for coming on and joining us and helping to light our minds on fire on this really fun topic of robotics. I appreciate it.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Derek Capo, go to the show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.